We're talking about the distance and the midpoint formulas. Two sweet things. Help you out with your geometry next year. Alright, these are the warm-up problems that you could work on if you want to make sure you know how to do that Pythagorean theorem. And let's get rocking with some vocabulary words so that we know how to use these distance formulas. Alright, first vocabulary word, it is a distance formula. It's the midpoint and the midpoint formula. They are all pretty much straightforward, what you would assume that they really mean. You're going to want to write down this formula to make sure that you have the information so that you can plug numbers in correctly. So if you're given 2 points, you can find the distance between those 2 points in a straight line based off of using this formula. This is a variation of using the Pythagorean theorem. Alright, let's rock. So if we're given 2 points, our job is to plug numbers into the distance formula and find the distance. So we need to say this is going to be point x1, y1. This will be x2, y2. It does not matter in which order I put them as long as I just keep them in the same order. So that this is all the second numbers, this is all the first numbers, or vice versa. Alright, so x2 is going to be my -3 minus my first x, which is a 1. We're going to square that stuff. My second y is a 0, and my first y is a 2. We're going to square that stuff, and we're going to take square roots of all of it. So a -3 minus 1 is a -4, so a -4 squared turns into a 16. A 0 minus 2 is a -2. A -2 squared is a 4. So 16 plus 4 is 20. So the square root of all of these things taking place, the square root of 20 is what we're going to find out for our distance. So I take the square root of 20 here on my calculator, and it tells me it is 4.47. Now I can answer this as the square root of 20 is 4.47, or like you can see down here at the bottom, I can simplify into 2 root 5 like we did in lesson 10.2. So that process is how we do it. Check it out, see if you can do it on your own with the multiple choice question. Plug them into the distance formula. Here's a more of a real life example of the distance formula. Let's say that I have this person who's doing the biathlon. They shoot a bullseye, or they're trying to shoot a bullseye, and they actually shot a spot that was 2 to the right and down 7 like this paragraph says. So what's the distance from here to here? Well, that's the hypotenuse if I make a triangle, or if I made it like this, the triangle, it's the hypotenuse. So when I find this diagonal line, I'm going to use the distance formula. Are you ready? So my 2 points are 0, 0, and 2, -7. So if this is my first one, x1, y1, x2, y2, I can plug them in very easily. So x2 is my 2, my x1 was my 0, my y2 is my -7, and my y1 is my 0. So all that stuff's in the square root sign. So 2 minus 0 is 2, 2 squared is 4. A -7 minus 0 is -7. -7 squared is 49. So the square root of 4 plus 49 is what we need to have. That's a 53. And the square root of 53 is 7.28. Okay? That's the process here, folks. Make sure you write down those steps so you don't make a little confusing mistake there. In the past, I've seen kids who put the incorrect sign. Remember, the sign has to go in there, or they forget that a minus makes a plus. Now, a little bit harder. Let's say we don't know a coordinate, and we know the distance. So we're going to figure out by using the same formula. So if this is my x1 and my y1, x2, that's an x, and my y2. Are you ready? So we plug those things in. x2 was a x1 is a 2. We're going to square that stuff. My y2 was a negative 4, and my y1 was a negative 1. Notice we had a subtract a negative there, so that's important to keep those signs. Minus a minus in our world makes a positive sign, or two negatives make a positive. So we go through the work here. This is a 5 according to the problem. So we're going to simplify. A minus 2 squared, I have to FOIL. A minus 2 times a minus 2. Now, in order for us to save some time, I'm going to tell you, as you remember, hopefully a squared minus 4a plus 4 is a minus 2 squared. A negative 4 plus 1 is a negative 3. A negative 3 squared is 9. So I'm going to write it over here now. 5 is equal to the square root of a squared minus 4a plus 4 plus 9. These guys make a 13, but we'll get that on the next step. To get rid of the square root, we have to square both sides. So 25 is equal to a squared minus 4a, and combining these plus 13. Now I'm going to make this equal to 0 so that I can factor. And it looks like a little weirdness writing over here, so I'm going to bring it back to this side. So we're coming back over here. Sorry if we're moving back and forth. 25, we're going to move by subtracting 25 minus 25. So we have 0 is equal to a squared minus 4a and a minus 12. So this is an a squared. Remember that now that we're at this point, we can factor. And when we factor, we're asking what multiplies to make a negative 12, adds to make a negative 4. So both of these are a's at the beginning so that we get our a squared in our foiling process. And for this to be negative, I don't have to have a plus and a minus. So a positive number should be our 2, see, because 2 times 12 makes that. And our negative number should make a 6. I'm sorry, 2 times 6 makes our negative 12. And when we add these, a negative 6 and a 2, we get our negative 4. So that means that my a is going to be equal to a negative 2 or a positive 6. Because we set both of these equal to 0. A plus 2 equals 0, and a minus 6 equals 0. So those are our two solutions. All right, moving on to the midpoint formula. The midpoint formula is very similar to the distance, except for we're adding and then we're dividing by 2. So let's go ahead and find that. It makes kind of sense if we're looking for averages of things. So midpoint formula, here it is. We just have to add our two x's. So my two x's, 8 and negative 4. 8 plus a negative 4 over 2. And then we have my y's. To make my y value, I'm going to have a negative 3 plus a negative 1 divided by 2. 8 plus negative 4 is a 4. 4 divided by 2 is a 2. So my x coordinate is 2. A negative 3 plus a negative 4 is a negative 1 is a negative 4. And a negative 4 divided by 2 makes a negative 2. I apologize. Sometimes I read the problem by saying the answer because my brain is going that fast, super fast. All right, here we are. Point is 2, negative 2, because we just figured out our x's here by doing this math, our y's over there. Here's your last chance to show me that you know how to do this stuff. Use that same process that we just did. And guess what, folks? This is the last part of Chapter 10. This is Bermination, signing off.